California, a land of towering redwoods, sun-drenched beaches, and fertile valleys. Long before European ships appeared on the horizon, this vibrant land was home to a remarkable tapestry of indigenous cultures. Over 70 distinct groups thrived here, each with its own language, traditions, and stories woven into the fabric of their existence. Imagine a land teeming with life, where the whispers of the wind carried the songs of countless generations. The Chumash navigated the Pacific Ocean in their sturdy tamals, fishing the abundant waters. The Pomo crafted intricate baskets so tightly woven they could hold water, and the Miwok gathered acorns amidst the Sierra Nevada foothills, their lives intrinsically connected to the rhythms of nature. This was a world of diversity and interconnectedness. Trade routes crisscrossed the land, carrying not just goods but also ideas and stories. Neighboring tribes shared knowledge about the land, the changing seasons, and the delicate balance of nature. They understood that their survival depended on respecting the natural world. From the towering redwood forests to the arid deserts, California's indigenous peoples thrived for millennia. They were the original stewards of this land, their lives a testament to the power of human resilience and adaptation. The indigenous peoples of California were masters of their environment. They had learned to live in harmony with nature, not as conquerors, but as partners. Their deep understanding of the land allowed them to thrive in a variety of ecosystems, from the rugged coastline to the towering mountains. One remarkable practice was forest gardening. Imagine walking through a forest that seemed wild and untouched, but was, in fact, carefully managed. Indigenous communities would cultivate a diverse array of edible and medicinal plants within the forest ecosystem. They nurtured these gardens, ensuring a steady supply of food and resources. Another ingenious practice was controlled burning. By carefully setting small, controlled fires, they prevented the buildup of dry underbrush that could fuel catastrophic wildfires. This practice not only protected their communities but also promoted the growth of new plants, attracting wildlife and maintaining the health of the ecosystem. These practices were not merely techniques for survival, they were rooted in a deep respect for the natural world. Indigenous communities believed in living in balance with nature, understanding that their well-being was inextricably linked to the health of the land. Their wisdom continues to inspire us today as we grapple with the challenges of climate change and environmental degradation. The social structures of California's indigenous tribes were as diverse as the land they inhabited. Some groups lived in small, nomadic bands, moving with the seasons to hunt and gather. Others resided in permanent villages, cultivating crops and fishing the abundant waters. Despite their differences, many tribes shared common threads in their social fabric. Family and kinship ties were paramount, forming the bedrock of their communities. Elders were revered for their wisdom and experience, their stories passed down through generations. Within these societies, men and women often held distinct roles. Men typically hunted and fished, providing for their families. Women gathered food, crafted intricate baskets, and tended to the home. However, these roles were not rigid, and women often held positions of influence and authority. One aspect of indigenous culture that challenges modern Western perspectives is the concept of two-spirit individuals. These individuals, often referred to as joyous by early Spanish colonizers, did not conform to traditional gender roles. They were highly respected within their communities, and often held important spiritual and ceremonial roles. The tapestry of indigenous California was woven with threads of diversity, resilience, and a deep connection to the natural world. Their stories offer a glimpse into a time when humans lived in harmony with nature, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of the land. The year was 1542. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, a Spanish expedition led by Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo sailed towards the unknown. They were searching for new lands, new riches, and perhaps a mythical passage to the fabled East Indies. Their arrival on the California coast marked a turning point in the history of this land and its indigenous inhabitants. Cabrillo's ships, with their billowing sails and foreign flags, must have been a startling sight for the people who had called this land home for centuries. Cabrillo's expedition was followed by others, each wave of explorers bringing with them the promise of new opportunities and the threat of unknown dangers. Francis Drake, the famed English explorer, landed on the California coast in 1579, claiming the land for England. These early encounters were often fleeting, mere glimpses into a world on the cusp of irreversible change. Little did the indigenous peoples know that these visits foreshadowed a new era, one that would forever alter the course of their history. Section 5. Bells ringing change. The Spanish, driven by a desire for land, wealth and religious conversion, began to establish a permanent presence in California in the late 18th century. In 1769, a Spanish expedition led by Gaspar de Portola and Father Junipero Serra founded the first mission in San Diego. This marked the beginning of a systematic effort to colonize California and convert its indigenous inhabitants to Christianity. Over the next few decades, a chain of 21 missions would be established along the California coast, connected by a road known as El Camino Real, the Royal Road. These missions, with their imposing architecture and ringing bells, became symbols of Spanish authority and the Catholic Church's growing influence in the region. They were designed to be self-sufficient communities, complete with churches, living quarters for the priests, and workshops for various trades. However, the establishment of these missions had a profound and often devastating impact on the lives of California's indigenous peoples. Their world, once defined by their own traditions and beliefs, was about to be irrevocably altered. Section 6. Missions and their impacts. The Spanish missions, envisioned as centers of religious conversion and cultural assimilation, became instruments of forced labor and cultural disruption for California's indigenous peoples. Indigenous people were often coerced or tricked into joining the missions, promised food, shelter, and a better life. Life within the mission system was harsh and unforgiving. Indigenous people were forced to abandon their traditional ways of life, their languages, and their beliefs. They were subjected to grueling labor, working long hours in the fields and workshops. Those who resisted faced punishment, including beatings and imprisonment. The missions also brought with them diseases that ravaged the indigenous population. Smallpox, measles, and influenza, diseases to which the indigenous people had no immunity, swept through their communities, causing widespread death and suffering. The mission system, driven by a misguided sense of religious zeal and a thirst for land and labor, left an indelible scar on the cultural landscape of California. It led to the displacement, enslavement, and death of countless indigenous people, shattering their traditional ways of life. Section 7. The price of progress. The Spanish colonization of California, while bringing with it new technologies and ideas, came at a heavy price for the indigenous population. Their traditional ways of life, their languages, their beliefs, and their very existence were threatened by the relentless encroachment of European culture. The mission system, while intended to convert and civilize the indigenous population, often had the opposite effect. It disrupted their social structures, separated families, and led to the loss of their cultural heritage. The forced assimilation policies of the Spanish government further eroded their traditions and languages. The introduction of new diseases had a devastating impact on the indigenous population, decimating their numbers and weakening their resistance to further encroachment. The once thriving communities were shattered, their populations decimated by disease and displacement. The story of Spanish colonization in California is a complex and often tragic one. It is a story of cultural clash, of ambition and exploitation, and of the resilience of a people determined to survive in the face of overwhelming odds. Section 8. A legacy endures. Despite the hardships they endured, the indigenous peoples of California never truly vanished. Their spirit, their resilience, and their enduring connection to the land continue to resonate in the very fabric of California. Their legacy can be seen in the names of places, from the majestic Yosemite Valley to the rolling hills of Malibu. Their artistry lives on in the intricate basketry and beadwork still crafted by their descendants. And their stories, passed down through generations, keep their culture and traditions alive. Today there is a growing movement to recognize and celebrate the contributions of California's indigenous peoples. Tribes are working to revitalize their languages, reclaim their cultural heritage, and heal from the wounds of the past. Section 9. Seeds of Hope. The story of California's indigenous peoples is not just a tale of survival, it is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. Despite facing centuries of oppression, they have never given up hope. They have fought to preserve their cultures, their languages, and their right to exist. Today, there is a growing awareness of the injustices they have faced and a commitment to reconciliation. Efforts are underway to preserve their languages, protect their sacred sites, and teach future generations about their rich history and cultural contributions. The seeds of hope planted by their ancestors are beginning to blossom. California's indigenous peoples are reclaiming their rightful place as stewards of the land and keepers of its ancient wisdom. Their story reminds us that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit can endure, adapt, and ultimately triumph.